What's up, guys? This is Hitchy Good, and today we've got some very interesting news from EA DICE regarding locked or unlocked weapons in Battlefield 6. Now, in case you haven't heard, DICE just recently posted on X saying open weapons versus closed weapons. Why not both? Starting at open beta, players can choose official playlists with signature weapons locked to class or not. More to come. So, this is a huge announcement basically where EA is hosting an open beta. They're announcing that, and it's probably going to be fairly soon. Things are starting to snowball here. We're starting to see a lot more action, a lot more news and details about Battlefield 6 as we get closer to that release. And of course, like it said, they're going to have two different playlists during the open beta, one with locked classes and one with unlocked classes. Good news, right? Well, maybe, and I'm here to offer an interesting take, and let's just see if I'm right. But if you think I've got a point by the end of this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It is totally free, and it is very, very much appreciated. So, listen, for any new viewers here that probably don't know that I've spent quite a lot of time in politics on the professional level, but you might be wondering, okay, how does that relate to this particular circumstance with DICE? Well, here's the deal. I've seen human nature reacting to heated public pressure campaigns, and whether it's politicians or game devs, they're all human, and they all have human nature. And if they have human nature, they can be very, very predictable. Now, I admit I could be wrong about this. Most gamers are looking at this and thinking, oh, this is a huge W. They're listening to us. They're finally entertaining the idea of locking the classes back. Yeah, maybe that's what's going on, but the overwhelming pressure that DICE received from the player base once they, not once, but twice doubled down on the idea of an open class system in Battlefield where combat medics can have sniper rifles, and more so really just completely gut a core feature of Battlefield, and that's playing around with the unique combat roles. How those combat roles are balanced is totally up for debate and changes. However, DICE has aggressively pursued the idea of open classes, a feature that will heavily favor the masses and not specifically the Battlefield community. After all, the corporate suits have announced that they want 100 million players on the next Battlefield game, a feat that is simply impossible without doing everything they can to mimic, well, 100 million player games like Fortnite. This has brought a lot of disappointment, a lot of concern to the fan base, and as it should. We don't want Call of Duty. We don't want Fortnite. Battlefield players are demanding a Battlefield game. Big freaking surprise. Any cursory glance at the comments of any Reddit posts, YouTube comments, discourse on X, it all points to the fact that about 80% of the player base want closed weapon classes. Now, just to briefly touch on this, locked classes, in case you're wondering or don't know, or maybe don't even you maybe haven't even picked a side, but locked classes helps keep the meta in check. If you want to use a C4, well, you'll have to fit into your combat role, and that's offered the challenge of Battlefield that has been different from other games. This particular system is what has kept me playing with new and different weapons a decade or over a decade since Battlefield 4 came out. This is what prevents just a top 3 to 5 guns dominating the entire game, and nobody wants that. So because of my time in politics, back to that, this particular half measure that DICE has introduced kind of set off my BS sensor a little bit. The idea that could be behind this is that DICE will conduct the open beta. They're going to put the two choices out there in the playlist, and they're going to use that, or the results or conclusion of that, as empirical data that they were right and the player base was wrong. So how do politicians respond to public outcry for certain policy? Well, they put together a referendum sometimes. If they don't want to go on record for it, they'll just say, we'll let the voters decide, and the voters can go out en masse and decide on a ballot if they want a particular issue to prevail. However, politicians like DICE have a big finger on the scale when it comes to deciding the outcomes of these referendums. That's exactly what DICE has presented us here, a referendum to the players, one which they can control. Because, see, in politics, the politicians have enough money to wage an electoral campaign, and they even get to word the questions in a particular manner that might favor what they want to do, which is usually nothing. And it allows them to get their side of the aisle out en masse. Notice that I keep using that term, en masse. And then the devs or the politicians, they turn around to the grassroots activists, or in this case, the Battlefield community, and say, see, Your issue just isn't popular with the people, and that's why we shouldn't do it. At the end of this open beta, I predict that more players will indeed pick the open class system. It sounds great after all, because who doesn't want choice? Who doesn't want openness? Who doesn't want that freedom, not knowing that the original structure of the game is what made Battlefield so great and that DICE is not listening? So, after more players choose unlocked classes, EA could proudly come out, make the numbers public, saying that the choice is clear, that the Battlefield community wants an open class system, knowing full well that that is a damn lie. The Battlefield community wants a lock system, but the masses out there, they want an open one. This could be the very thing that EA needs to put the discourse over locked and unlocked classes to rest. So that being said, no matter the outcome, members of the Battlefield community need to saturate every post that DICE makes with demands for closed classes, and while you're at it, no skill-based matchmaking, and while you're at it, a server browser. But I digress. Now, I know that I addressed this in the last video, earlier this week, but in case you didn't see it, it's not so much that an open class system is going to kill Battlefield 6 for us, because there's people out there who are probably wondering, why are they making such a big deal about this? Why is everybody in an uproar? It's not that this particular issue is going to ruin the game. Yes, it is going to be to the game's detriment, but it's not going to kill it. Skill-based matchmaking is a lot more likely to do that. This issue right here is subjective proof that DICE devs don't want to listen to their player base. They will listen to the corporate suits, to the marketers, to the investors. Even on issues where 80 to 90% of the community wants something, this shows just how dismissive they're willing to be, which is a terrible omen for the rest of the game's lifespan, to think that any issue that 80 to 90% of the player base wants or is against, the devs can just overrule them at any time because they simply don't care. This is a game that they're trying to make for the masses. So, that leads to this. What do you think? Am I wrong? Am I right? Or simply blowing this out of proportion? Maybe overthinking it? Maybe I am. But maybe this is what's going on behind the scenes. But leave your comments, leave your opinions below, even if you disagree with me. Thank you. I appreciate the algorithm boost. And know that I appreciate your support with the likes and comments. They really do make a huge difference. But other than that, hit you good out.
A little bit action on top of the hill, all right, but I think they got it.